Hello class, for today's video, we're going to discuss Chapter 8, the Null and Alternative Hypothesis. Okay, so we have the following terminologies. We have H sub O, this is the Null Hypothesis, H sub 1, the Alternative Hypothesis. Okay, so when we say hypothesis testing is another area of inferential statistics, how does it differ from estimation than was taken up in the previous chapter? So while estimation is concerned with determining specific parameter values, testing hypothesis is hypothesizing about the population parameter and subjecting this hypothesis to a test. How do we do it? We get a random sample from the population, collect data from the sample, and use this sample data to make a decision as to whether the hypothesis is acceptable or not. So, when we say hypothesis, gagawa tayo dito ng mga sample or let's say, may isang problem, papatunayan natin kung tama ba yun or mali. Okay, so, acceptable ba or hindi? Okay, so, there are two types of hypothesis. We have the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. So, when we say null, ito yung ibig sabihin na invalid or having no legal or binding force. So, the null hypothesis is what we want to test. Okay, so, kaya nga siya invalid. So, therefore, kailangan natin or gugustuhin natin na i-test yung problem na yun. Okay, so it states an exact value about the parameter. When the null hypothesis is accepted, the buck stops there. So, but when the null hypothesis is rejected, this leads to another option, which is the alternative hypothesis. Okay, so once yung null hypothesis is rejected, may another option tayo, which is the alternative hypothesis that allows for the possibility of many values. Okay, so another hypothesis testing is a decision-making process for evaluating claims about a population based on the characteristics of a sample purportedly coming from that population. So, the decision is whether the characteristics is acceptable or not. Okay, so the null hypothesis denoted by H sub O. Okay, so this is the definition of null, is a statement that there is no difference between a parameter and a specific value, or that there is no difference between two parameters. Okay, so yan yung tinatawag natin na invalid. Okay, so wherein the alternative hypothesis denoted by H sub 1 is a statement that there is a difference between a parameter and a specific value. Okay, so when we say null, there is no difference, and when we say alternative, there is a difference between a parameter and a specific value, or that there is a difference between two parameters. Okay, so the null hypothesis would be written in symbol as, okay, so ito po yung null hypothesis, H sub O is 2. Okay, so we have, so symbol po ito class is mean. Okay, so natandaan nyo yung mga symbol ha, yung mga previous discussion natin. Okay, so H sub O is 2, mean sub 1 equals mean sub 2. Okay, so the null hypothesis is the starting point of investigation. Okay, so thus, it is the first statement to be made. Okay, so at the end of the process, a decision is made as to whether not guilty should be rejected or not rejected. Okay, so let's proceed to the given examples. So we have applying hypothesis. Okay, so example number 1. Okay, so bottled fruit juice content. The owner of a factory that sells a particular bottled fruit juice claims that the average capacity of a bottle of their product is 250 ml. Okay, so parang yung may-ari ng or yung owner ng factory, yung sa bottled fruit juice content, parang kiniklaim niya na yung every bottle of their product is 200 ml. So, the question is the claim true? Kumbaga, walang kasiguraduhan na every bottle of their product is exact 250 ml. Okay, so yun yung gagawin natin. Titingnan natin kung tunay nga ba yung haka-haka ng owner or mali. Is the claim true or not? Okay, so to test the claim, the members of a consumer group did the following. Okay, so ito yung mga ginawa nila para matest if tama yung hypothesis nila. Okay, so letter A, get a sample of 100 such bottles. Okay, so marami yung bottles. So every bottle 250 ml, pero kukunin lang natin dito is a sample of 100 bottles. Okay, so letter B, calculate the capacity of each bottle. So kukunin natin dito yung mean and standard deviation. Okay, so letter C, compare the sample mean and the claim. Okay, so we have here the observed mean capacity of the 100 bottle is, okay, so ito class na 243 ml. Ito na po yung nakuha na mean ng mga consumer. Okay, so nakuha na po itong value for mean. Galing po to doon sa 100 bottles. Okay, so the sample standard deviation is 10 ml. Okay, so kung gusto nyo ito class makuha kung bakit or paano nakuha yung 243 ml, then yung mean, and then standard deviation na 10 ml, gamitin nyo lang yung previous formula natin sa pagkuha ng mean and SD or standard deviation. Okay, so in the example, the owner's statement, which is yon called claim, sila yung nag-claim na every bottle is 250 ml. It's a general statement. The claim is that the capacity of all their bottled product is 250 ml per bottle. Okay, so ito po yung sinasabi ng owner statement. So, the population mean is 250 ml. Okay, so on the other hand, the consumer group has a sample value which is, okay, so ito class yung nakuha na natin na sample or the observed mean, yung nakuha na to 243 ml, clearly a sample mean. Okay, so yung mean is 250 or the population mean is 250 ml and the sample mean is 243. So there is a difference of 7 ml. So subtract nyo lang 250 minus 243, so the difference is 7 ml. So can the consumer group generalize that the bottle product is short of the claim? If this can be proven, then the factory owner is lying. Okay, so if ever na yung consumer group mapatunayan na mali nga yung claim ng owner, ibig sabihin yung factory owner is lying, okay, or nagsisinungaling. So the evidence has to be established. Okay, so once na napatunayan na mali yung claim ng owner, okay, which is yung gagamitin natin sa first is dapat null hypothesis. Once napatunayan na yung the factory owner is lying, doon na natin gagamitin yung alternative hypothesis. So the consumer group gets interested in the population mean. They are interested to know if in reality each bottle contains 250 ml. Okay, so thus the two hypotheses would be, okay, so ito na po class yung dalawang hypothesis na gagawin natin. So H sub O or stands for null hypothesis. The bottle drinks contains 250 ml per bottle. Okay, so ito na po yung claim or ito yung sinasabi ng owner na kada bottle it contains 250 ml. Ito yung sa null hypothesis, okay? This is the claim. And yung alternative hypothesis natin or H sub 1, the bottle drinks do not contain. Okay, so yung this is the claim, ito yung haka-haka or sinasabi ng factory owner or factory owner. Tama? Then H sub 1, ito na yung kasi hindi natin masasabi na tama yung owner. So, para masabi natin yun, so gagamitin natin yung null and alternative. Okay, so for H sub 1, the bottle drinks do not contain 250 ml per bottle. So, this is the opposite of the claim. Okay, so but this statement should be written in symbols. For now, let us drop the unit measured as simply, right? Okay, so kailangan natin class isulat yung statement in symbols. So, H sub O is 2. Okay, so di ba yung population mean natin is 250, okay? Ito yung kiniklaim ng may-ari na yung bottle contain 250 ml, okay? So, sa population mean, we have 250 ml and H sub 1 or alternative. So, population mean is not equal to 250. Bakit not equal? Okay, so based po dito sa H sub 1 or the alternative hypothesis, so the bottled drinks do not contain. So, when you say do not, ibig sabihin, not equal. Okay? So, population mean is not equal to 250 ml. Okay, so the expression may be interpreted as follows. Okay, so the sample comes from a population whose mean is 250. Okay, so galing po ito doon sa claim ng may-ari. And number 2, the sample comes from a population whose mean is equal to the population mean, which is 250. So it is the claim. Okay, so if mean sub 1, okay, ito class na symbol is for mean, so read as mean sub 1 is the population where the sample comes from, and mean is the population mean or the claim. So then the null hypothesis may also be written as, okay? So yung kanina class, yung null hypothesis din yun. So pwede din natin na isulat yung null hypothesis as H sub O is to mean equals mean sub 1. And the alternative is, okay class, ito po yung sa null ha, ito po yung sa null. Ito naman yung sa alternative. Bakit not equal? Kasi ito yung opposite ng null. Okay, so H sub 1 is to mean is not equal to mean sub 1. Okay, so we have in mathematics, the symbol in the alternative hypothesis suggests either a greater than relation or a less than relation. So what is the interpretation of the not equal in this example? It means that the consumer group is not interested in getting a sample mean greater than 250 or a sample mean less than 250. Okay, so 'di ba kasi yung may-ari kiniklaim nila na yung 250 ml per bottle. Pero naman yung consumer group hindi sila interested or parang hindi sila sang-ayon na every bottle contains 250 ml. Kumbaga, yung null hypothesis, kabaliktaran ng alternative hypothesis. However, this does not make sense in the given exercise. The consumer group has a purpose, a direction. Okay, kasi gusto nilang malaman kung nagsisinungaling ba yung may-ari or hindi. So, the consumer group may want to refute. Okay, so yung consumer group gusto nilang mapatunayan na tama nga yung owner's claim, tama ba yung sinasabi niya na every bottle contains 250 mm. So, the appropriate alternative symbol hypothesis is, okay, so ito naman po yung symbol for alternative hypothesis. So, we have H sub 1 is to mean less than 250. Okay, so ito po, minsan sa activity nyo, pagpapagawin kayo ng symbol, ganito po kasi yung paggawa ng symbol, okay? So, next. Okay, so we have the so-called non-directional and directional. So, what is the difference between two? When the alternative hypothesis utilizes the not equal, okay, so saan to class? Sa non-directional and directional, sa alternative hypothesis lang po to class, hindi po dito kasabay yung null hypothesis. So, when the alternative hypothesis utilizes the not equal symbol, the test is said to be non-directional. Okay? If not equal, it is said to be non-directional. But, when the alternative hypothesis utilizes the greater than or equal symbol, the test is said to be directional. Okay, so therefore, yung kanina sa first example natin, okay, so ito, since it denoted as less than, so itong first example natin is directional. Okay, kasi sa next example nyo, papahanapin doon sa inyo if non-directional by or directional. Okay? So, let's proceed to example number 2. We have music and studies. Okay, so the problem is, a teacher wants to know if listening to popular music affects the performance of pupils. A class of 50 grade 1 pupils was used in the experiment. So, the mean score was 83. Okay, so dito class, given na po dito yung mean and then standard deviation, which is 5. So, a previous study revealed that the mean is 82 and the standard deviation is 10. Okay, so previous study po to class ha. Yung ngayon is 83 and SD is 5. So, sa previous, the mean is 82 and the SD is equal to 10. Now, letter A, state the null and the alternative hypothesis in words and in symbols. So, we're going to state the null and alternative in words and in symbols. And letter B, state whether the test is directional or non-directional. Okay, so titingnan natin kung directional ba or non-directional yung statement. Okay, so for our solution, okay, so the parameter of interest is the population mean. Okay, so kukunin po natin class yung previous, which is 82. Okay, 82 po yung hahanapin natin. Or gagamitin natin pala. Okay, so number 1. In words, the hypothesis are. Okay, so kasi diba hahanapin natin is yung words and in symbols. So, for null hypothesis or H sub O, we have the sample comes from a population whose mean is 82. Okay? So, the sample comes from a population whose mean is 82. Ito yung kiniklaim doon sa given example na yung mean daw is 82. Okay, so how about naman pag alternative? Okay, so H sub 1, the sample comes from a population whose mean is equal to the population mean, which is 82. Okay, so tatandaan nyo lang class na yung null is kabaliktaran ng alternative. Kumbaga, yung null hypothesis, parang kinakalaban yung or kinakalaban ng alternative hypothesis. Okay? So, therefore, H sub 1 or alternative hypothesis, the sample does not come from a population. Okay? Kung mga kinokontra ng alternative yung null hypothesis rather. Okay? If sa null hypothesis, the population is or the population mean is 82, sa alternative hypothesis naman, the sample does not come from a population whose mean is 82. Okay? Kinokontra ng alternative yung null hypothesis. Okay, so in symbols, so eto na, tapos na tayo class sa tapos na tayo sa word. So kukunin natin yung in symbols. So we write, so for H sub O or null hypothesis, so mean equals 82. Okay, so kasi nga based dito, the sample comes from a population whose mean is 82 and sa H sub 1 naman does not come from a population. Okay, so when we say does not come, so meaning not equal. Okay, so H sub 1 natin or alternative hypothesis, so mean is not equal to 82. Okay, so number 2, so we are done with the symbol and word for null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. So for number 2, there is no clue as to the direction of the investigation. So the phrase affects performance implies either an increase or a decrease in performance. So the test is a non-directional. Okay, so kung babalikan nyo yung binigay natin kanina, yung sa definition ng non-directional and directional, pag given yung not equal, non-directional po yung class. So, therefore, non-directional yung sagot natin. Pero, if greater than or equal, directional po yan class. Okay? So, yun. Number 2 natin is non-directional. Okay? So, we are done with example number 2. So, next, let's proceed to example number 3. Okay, so the problem is all about organic fertilizers. Okay, so number 3. A farmer believes that using organic fertilizers on the plants will yield greater income. Okay, so nabanggit dito class yung word na or yung symbol na greater. Okay, so his average income from the past was 200,000 pesos per year. So, state the hypothesis in symbols. So, wala naman dito na mention if, null, or alternative. So, in our solution, okay, so since sabi dito state the hypothesis, so kukunin natin class both the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Okay, so for the null hypothesis, we have mean equals 200,000. Okay, so the phrase greater income is associated with the greater than direction. So, okay, so ito po class yung sa ano natin na, ito yung sa null hypothesis. Diretso tayo sa mean equals 200,000. Then, since mayroon tayo dito na greater income, mapupunta po to class doon sa alternative hypothesis wherein H sub 1, so mean is greater than 200,000. Okay? So, again, saan po class nakuha yung greater income or greater than? Dito po sa given problem. Okay? So, ito will yield greater income. Okay? So, again, our null hypothesis, mean equals 200,000. So, saan galing yung 200,000? Dito po sa given problem. Okay? So, for our alternative hypothesis, we have mean is greater than 200,000. So, greater than, dito po galing sa given problem. Okay? Okay, so that's all for today, class. That's all for today's lesson. So, again, review tayo. When we say null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis, when we say null hypothesis, ito po yung kiniklaim ng problem. Okay, so for example, yung kanina sa first example natin, ano ba yung gustong i-claim ng may-ari? For example, the factory owner claims that every bottle contains 250 millimeters. So, that's the null hypothesis. Then, when we say naman alternative hypothesis, kinokontra yung null hypothesis. Okay, so if the null hypothesis contains or every bottle contains 250 millimeter, the alternative hypothesis does not contain 250 millimeter. Okay, so parang tandaan nyo lang na yung null hypothesis and alternative ay magkakontra or kinokontra yung isa't isa. Okay, so that's all for today's lesson, class. So I hope you learned from this short video lesson. If ever you have a question regarding to this topic, so you may ask me on our GC or through personal message. Goodbye, class, and see you on our next video lesson.